The story begins with Xian Yu, an affluent CEO of Shenzhen Group. He is on his way to meet a scientist, Dr. Zhang, to check out a potential investment opportunity. In the meantime, Xian Yu's artisanal boss becomes concerned when he discovers Xian Yu ventured out alone. This is because Xian Yu suffers from a fear of physical contact, a condition that leaves him struggling to breathe upon the slightest touch from people. Moments later, Xian Yu reaches Dr. Zhang's office, and upon entering, he is met by an incredibly realistic female AI robot. But as he approaches the robot, she hugs him. Xian Yu then swiftly pulls away from her, but to his surprise, he doesn't experience any discomfort despite making physical contact. Shortly after, Dr. Zhang arrives, then introduces Fan Xing-1, his latest creation. She is a companion robot designed to assist individuals who struggle to interact with people. As Xian Yu prepares to leave, Dr. Zhang attempts to open the door for him. At that moment, their hands inadvertently make contact, leading to an instant wave of panic and physical discomfort for Xian Yu. Subsequently, Dr. Zhang calls his sister Fan Xing, who happens to be a nurse, and informs her about Xian Yu's condition. As Xian Yu is rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, Fan Xing calls out his name but receives no response. At this moment, he is logged in a traumatic flashback of his parents' fatal car crash. Xian Yu snapped out of the trance, and his body returns to normal. Upon returning from the hospital, Lang Wanshan, a friend of Xian Yu's late father and shareholder at his company, arrives at his house. After the death of our hero's parents, Wanshan went from being a minor shareholder in the company to the second largest shareholder. During their meeting, he aims to seize control of the company's management by asserting that Xian Yu is incapable due to his condition. After Wanshan leaves, Xian Yu sinks into a depression and retreats to his old home. But walls of this small house are plastered with information about his parents' fatal car crash. He's convinced that it was no accident and believes Wanshan is behind the tragedy. Next, Dr. Zhang receives a message from Xian Yu telling him to send the robot to his house the following day. Unfortunately, just as the spirits are lifting, the robot suddenly malfunctions and shuts down. The doctor attempts to fix it, but realizes it's going to take some time to do so. Typical computer. Witnessing her brother's distress, Fan Xing proposes to be the robot temporarily, since the prototype is based on her. Dr. Zhang, having no other option, reluctantly agrees to her proposition. The following day, Fan Xing learned how to respond to behave just like a robot and is sent to Xian Yu's house. There, our hero gives her a test room with a series of tasks, and everything seems to function without issue. Just then, Uncle So arrives with the information that Wanshan intends to organize a secret shareholders meeting to discuss the takeover. Upon receiving the news, Xian Yu hurries to the company with Fan Xing. On the way, he emphasizes the need to act as naturally as possible and not reveal she's a robot. Meanwhile, Wanshan begins the shareholders meeting at the company. Citing Xian Yu's health condition and the shareholders' interests, he proposes that Xian Yu took a temporary leave and transfer control of the company to him. As Xian Yu enters the room, Wanshan approaches him and displays the voting result. At that moment, everyone is taken aback when they notice that Xian Yu and Fan Xing are holding hands and clearly touching, yet isn't experiencing an attack. Shortly after, Xian Yu tears up the voting results and adjourns the board meeting. Wanshan is pissed, and seeing Xian Yu's unusual behavior that day, he orders an investigation into him. Meanwhile, Xian Yu and Fan Xing return home. There, she tries to use the bathroom multiple times, but he stops her from doing so. Afterward, Xian Yu takes Fan Xing outside to charge her in the sunlight while he keeps her company. Or Fan Xing endures the urge to pee until he finally goes to the bathroom. She quickly searches for a spot to relieve herself, but then falls into the swimming pool as he approaches. Observing Fan Xing struggling in the water, Xian Yu leaps in to rescue her and helps her retrieve her battery as well. After a while, Fan Xing realizes that she inadvertently relieved herself in the swimming pool. Later, Xian Yu receives a call from Lang Yu, his childhood friend, who also happens to be Wanshan's daughter. Meanwhile, Dr. Zhang observes to the monitor that his sister is thoroughly drenched. Worried for her well-being, he rushes to her, and Fan Xing recounts the events of the day to her brother. In the meantime, Xian Yu arrives at a restaurant and finds Lang Yu waiting for him. During the meal, she presents a box with a ring and expresses her desire to marry him. Witnessing Xian Yu's stunned expression, Lang Yu reminds him of the promise they made when they were both 10 years old. However, he asserts that he can't marry anyone until his parents' killer is brought to justice. Upon returning home, Lang Yu confides in her father Wanshan about Xian Yu's rejection and asks for his help in pursuing him. The latter promises to help her in any way he can. Later that evening, when Xian Yu returns home, he sees smoke everywhere. Thinking there's a fire, he rushes inside, only to discover Fan Xing cooking. To his surprise, he finds Dr. Zhang is also there. The clever Fonsing quickly comes up with the excuse that she invited Dr. Zhang over to create a menu database after finding his meals monotonous. In response, Xianyu asks the doctor to prioritize upgrading her music system instead. Afterward, Dr. Zhang notices Xianyu holding his sister's hand, which infuriates him. He threatens to call a police as Xianyu doesn't release her. Confused, Xianyu asks what he's talking about, but the doctor wisely shuts up. Xianyu states that he has the right to do anything he pleases with the robot. An altercation unfolds between the two, which is observed by a man outside their door. Upon hearing some commotion outside, Uncle Sao walks into the yard but doesn't see anyone. Just as he turns to re-enter the house, a masked man with a hat and a limp emerges. However, when Uncle Sao turns around again, he only catches a glimpse of a man leaving the property. Meanwhile, to prevent Xianyu from mistreating his sister, Dr. Zhang brings out 2 watches. Supposedly, these watches are meant for Xianyu to monitor Fonsing Lun, but their real purpose is to create a boundary between the two. The watch will allow her to monitor his movements and keep tabs remotely. That night, Xianyu awakens abruptly due to a soft trickle in the water coming from the bathroom. As he investigates, he finds Fonsing taking a shower. Startled by Xianyu's sudden appearance, Fonsing hastily covers herself with a bath towel. However, in a state of panic, the bath towel slips and falls as he approaches. Fortunately, Fonsing manages to save herself by explaining that taking a shower is part of the self-cleaning and protection programming protocol. The next day at work, Xianyu thinks about Fonsing and suddenly feels his heart beating faster. Our heroine's smartwatch detects this, and she promptly asks him about the matter. To hide his embarrassment, he asks her to make him a cup of coffee. Just then, Uncle Sal places a file in front of him, revealing that Wen Yu has applied for a position in his company. Moments later, she herself arrives and reveals that she originally wanted to be his assistant, but since he wasn't hiring, she applied for the managerial position. While they chat, Fonsing returns with a coffee, and Wen Yu inquires about her presence. Xianyu then informs her that she's his assistant, a statement that instantly displeases Wen Yu. As a result, she becomes resolute in her decision to replace Fonsing as his assistant. In the meantime, Uncle Chao calls a Wan Chan's assistant, asking him if Wen Yu applying for the job was his doing. However, he claims to be unaware of this development. Observing him win, Uncle Sao speculates that the masked man from the other night might be a Quan. Meanwhile, Wan Chan examines the photos taken by his assistant, a Quan, and finds the pictures of Fonsing as well as Dr. Zhang at Xianyu's house. Wan Chan an instruction to continue investigating the activities of all 3 of them. Later that night, Fonsing persistently urges Xianyu to eat, leading him to believe that the robot has malfunctioned. He then phones Dr. Zhang, and upon meeting, they engage in a fiery hot pot challenge. Shortly after leaving, the doctor receives a voice message in which Xianyu requests Fonsing sleep with him. Panicked, he rushes to rescue his sister, but upon arriving, learns that Xianyu's supposed request for her to sleep with him had merely been a request for a bedtime story. The following day, Wen Yu makes a surprise visit to Xianyu's residence, where she encounters Fonsing. Immediately, she jumps to the conclusion that they're living together and asks if the two are in a relationship. Although Fonsing clarifies that she's Nelly Xianyu's assistant, Wen Yu insists that he has feelings for her. However, she asserts that it's impossible for him to care for her genuinely, and their relationship is destined to be short-lived. After hearing Yu's biting sarcasm and ridicule, Fonsing quickly expresses her dissatisfaction. At this moment, Xianyu intervenes and asks Fonsing to prepare breakfast for the two. When Wen Yu hears him address the woman as Fonsing number 1, she can't help but feel somewhat flexed. Just then, Wen Yu notices something resembling a battery on Fonsing's neck and reaches out to touch it. Xianyu quickly darts over and firmly grasps her hand, but as soon as he makes contact with her, his phobia kicks in. Startled, Wen Yu hurries to find Uncle Sao, while Fonsing locates Xianyu's medication and administers it with a shot. Afterward, Wen Yu confides in Uncle Sao, expressing her desire to be with Xianyu. Likewise, Uncle Sao also reveals that he too wishes she to be with the young master. After sharing this sentiment, he retreats to his room and retrieves an instruction manual. Upon discovering that Fonsing is a robot, Wen Yu's face breaks into a joyful smile. Meanwhile, Quan shares Dr. Zhang's background details with Wan Chan. He reveals that Dr. Zhang is the creator of an advanced companion intelligence robot, prompting Wan Chan to tell him to look deeper into the matter. Upon discovering that Fonsing is a robot, Wen Yu seeks out Dr. Zhang for answers. She asked about Xianyu's assistant and notices the identical robot model in his lab. In response, the doctor asserts that both robots are the same model, with this one in his laboratory having been sent back for maintenance. However, Lang Yu remains skeptical and presses him for the truth, leading the doctor to ultimately disclose the actual facts. The following day, Wanchan invites Xian Yu to a banquet, and our hero intends to use this opportunity to search his residence. He then informs Fonsing that her mission for the evening is to get Wanchan and Lang Yu drunk, while he searches their house. That night, the two of them arrive at the residence as planned. Wanchan suggests playing dice with Xian Yu, a game Fonsing isn't skilled at, so he signals her to switch the plans, and Fonsing pretends to excuse herself to go to the bathroom. Inside Wanchan's room, Fonsing anxiously scans her surroundings when suddenly Lang Yu arrives and asks what she's doing there. She reveals that she's aware of Fonsing's true identity and asks if she has any romantic feelings for Xian Yu. After this, Lang Yu takes off her necklace and offers it to Fonsing as a bribe to get her to get out of Xian Yu's life. In response, our heroine promises that she has no intentions of pursuing a romantic relationship with Xian Yu. She also confesses her wariness of pretending to be a robot and handling numerous tasks day in and day out. Meanwhile, Wanchan shares a drink with Xian Yu, who struggles to keep pace with him. It's evident that our hero is feeling very uncomfortable at this point. To make matters even more painful, Wanchan abruptly asks Xian Yu to marry his daughter. However, the latter swiftly declines, saying he is not ready. When Fonsing returns to the room, she witnesses Xian Yu being pressured into doing something against his will. So she returns the necklace to Lang Yu and helps Xian Yu in leaving. Upon their return home, he openly shares with Fonsing that he likes her, and even surprises her with a passionate kiss. Following this, Fonsing gazes at Xian Yu, her mind recalling the recent events. Lost in thought, she delves into her heart, acknowledging that she has genuinely fallen for him. But just as she's about to reveal the truth to him, her brother calls to inform her that Fonsing 1, the actual robot, has been repaired. When Xian Yu awakens the next morning, he discovers a note from Fonsing explaining that she has gone outside to recharge. He then realizes that he might have acted inappropriately while he was drunk the previous night. Later, Fonsing takes it upon herself to prepare a meal for Xian Yu. Her brother informs her that they will be swapping her with the original robot the next day. Hearing this, our sweet heroine becomes visibly distressed. Meanwhile, Dr. Zhang not only fixes the robot, but also incorporates some advanced programming. While he's talking to Fonsing 1, Lang Yu unexpectedly enters the lab. The robot then takes the initiative to greet her and senses Lang Yu has recently experienced a breakup. However, Lang Yu pushes her aside and approaches Dr. Zhang, expressing her desire to purchase a robot identical to Xian Yu. Elsewhere, Xian Yu tidies at the room, adding some decorative touches. He even purchases a pair of matching dolls and positions them in the center of the bed. Just as he's about to invite Fonsing in to reveal a surprise, an unexpected knock on the door by Uncle Sal interrupts him. Elsewhere, before constructing the robot for Yu, Dr. Zhang has her complete a questionnaire, which leaves her puzzled. He then replies awkwardly, confessing that he has never been in love before, so he needs this information to make the robot capable of falling in love with her. Upon hearing this, Lang Yu suddenly draws closer to him, trying to help him grasp the feeling of having a crush. She then attempts to evoke some emotion in him by showing him a series of horror movies, only to discover that the doctor is entirely immune to them. Frustrated, she resorts to physical contact. In the next scene, Lang Yu, under the mistaken belief that the item before her is a hand cream, proceeds to apply it to her hands and then takes Dr. Zhang's hand in hers. It is only at this moment when they both realize that their hands have become bonded together. Clearly, the product was not a hand cream but a strong adhesive. Unfortunately, the laboratory has run out of solvent and the only option is to order more online, which won't arrive until the next day. With their hands glued together, she leads Dr. Zhang to the restroom. However, fearing he might overhear any noises, she struggles to relieve herself. In a surprising turn, the doctor uses his irritable flipsinin deserenator, masking any undesirable noises. This leaves Lang Yu surprised as she believed Dr. Zhang was incapable of emotions. Meanwhile, Xian Yu reviews the video footage of Wanchan's resident and accidentally overhears the conversation between Lang Yu and Fonsing. This is when he realizes that Fonsing is actually a human. Elsewhere, Dr. Zhang contacts his sister and learns that Xian Yu has left, so he and Lang Yu bring Fongxin along. Our heroine notices them holding hands and assumes that they're in a relationship, although they both deny it. She then gives Fonsing one some instructions saying it's very important for Xian Yu's health to familiarize herself with her surroundings. Unfortunately, just as Fonsing and the others are preparing to leave, Xian Yu arrives in his car. Seeing him stare out of the vehicle, Fonsing frantically explains that Dr. Yang intends to take her back for an upgrade. However, Xian Yu expresses doubt, wondering if she's genuinely a robot. Just then, the robot Fonsing 1 responds to its name and emerges from the house. Perplexed, Xianyu questions Fonsing about the robot. Our heroine and Dr. Zhang try to explain, but he refuses to listen and accuses the doctor of fraud. Following this, Xianyu seeks advice about the situation from a psychologist, who clarifies that since he believes Fonsing is a robot, he doesn't resist her mentally. In the meantime, Fonsing returns to the hospital to resume her work and narrates a story of Pinocchio to a sick child. It's at this moment that she realizes deceiving Xianyu was wrong. On the other hand, Dr. Zhen and Man Yu visit a hospital together after spending 2 days in each other's company. As their fingers part, they exchange smiles before leaving. Meanwhile, Xianyu rushes to the hospital after hearing Uncle Sao has been injured. When asked about the cause of the injuries, Uncle Sao claims that he was attacked by some thugs. Hearing this, Xianyu becomes furious that he hasn't reported the incident to the police yet. As they're talking, Uncle Sao's phone suddenly rings. He reluctantly picks it up and a person on the other end threatens to punish him further if he doesn't settle his gambling debt on time. Later, as Xianyu leaves the room, he coincidentally crosses paths with Fonsing, who calls him out by name. He then clarifies that everything he said to her previously was solely related to the Fonsing 1 project, and his actions were not motivated by any personal feelings for her. Ultimately, he hopes that Fonsing can erase those memories because, in his opinion, they are two strangers who have never fully crossed paths. That night, as Xianyu returns home to an empty dining table, memories of Fonsing and their time together flood his mind. Later, he finds himself unable to sleep and stuffs outside to gaze at the stars, ultimately catching a cold in the process. Fonsing also finds herself unable to sleep, upset by Xianyu's words. However, she still feels guilty for deceiving him by posing as a robot. Just then, she notices an alarming change in Xianyu's body temperature on her watch sensor. Fonsing rushes to his home and discovers him lying in bed with a high fever. Without wasting any time, she applies a cold compress on him and administers some medicines. After leaving, Fonsing confides in her brother about her feelings for Xianyu. Hearing this, Dr. Zhang feels terrible about the whole thing, so he decides to help her. The following evening, while Xianyu is outside playing basketball, Dr. Zhang unexpectedly walks in and proposes a challenge. Best of 10 throws. If Xianyu wins, he will stop bothering him, and if he loses, he has to buy Dr. Zhang a Coke. Being the competitive guy that he is, our hero agrees right away. The match remains evenly matched, but at the final ball, Xianyu loses to Dr. Zhang. While sipping on a cola, Dr. Zhang opens up to Xianyu about his relationship with his sister. He explains that his parents always had Fonsing by his side. She has never let her parents down and has consistently cared for him since childhood. Out of a sense of protectiveness for his sister, Dr. Zhang clarifies that Fonsing harbored no ill intentions towards Xianyu and is currently overwhelmed by the sadness of losing him. Finally, he humbly asks for forgiveness for concealing the truth about the robot. Upon hearing this, Xianyu inquires about Fonsing's whereabouts so he can go visit her and patch things up. Elsewhere, as Fonsing is finishing her night shift, someone cautions her about a recent stalker, urging her to be cautious. Initially, she doesn't pay much attention to it, but soon realizes someone is following her. She then quickens her pace, but the stalker closes in on her, brandishing a knife. Luckily, Xianyu arrives just in time and scares him off. Later, he confesses that he couldn't bring himself to forgive her, solely because she had witnessed his vulnerable side. He then earnestly confesses to Fonsing that he genuinely cares for her and is terrified of losing her. After the two put their hearts to each other, the issues between them vanish, and they share a passionate kiss. Meanwhile, Dr. Zhang closely monitors their changing heartbeats in the laboratory and can't help but feel happy for them. Moments later, Len Yu arrives and confides in him that she has come to realize that her feelings for Xianyu are simply rooted in childhood familiarity. Consequently, she decides to cancel her order for a Xianyu-based robot. The following morning, Xianyu leads Fonsing to his modest cabin and shares the tragic story of his parents' car accident. After years of conducting a clandestine investigation, he has strong suspicions that Wan Shan might be the culprit. Determined to assist him in uncovering the truth, Fonsing decides to join the investigation. In the next scene during a shareholder meeting at the company, it's announced that Xianyu wants to establish a research and development department for AI robots. When our hero is not around, Wan Shan expresses his concern about him potentially squandering the company's funds. Moreover, he suggests Xianyu be removed from his CEO position. Persuaded by his arguments, the shareholders unanimously vote in favor of the proposal. Afterward, Wan Shan asks Quan about the two sponsoring companies, Wayu Capital and Nantian Capital. The assistant reassures him that everything is progressing seamlessly, and both sponsors have committed to offering their full support once Xianyu is removed as CEO. Elsewhere, Quan confronts Uncle Sao, questioning if he has not earned enough money after years of service to the family. In response, The latter shares his dire financial situation, burdened by gambling debts. As they continue talking, Uncle Sao drops a bombshell, revealing their involvement in the death of Xianyu's parents. This means that he is the main villain after all. Following this, Uncle Shao orchestrates a plan with Aquan to replicate the car accident with the intention of eliminating Xianyu. Upon returning home, Uncle Shao reveals to Xianyu that Wan Shan has covertly held a shareholder's meeting to remove him from his position. Hearing this, Xianyu calmly instructs his assistant to summon the CEOs of a couple of other companies. The following day, just as Wan Shan is about to assume office, he receives word that the company has been acquired. When Xianyu steps into the room, it dawns on Wan Shan that the mysterious owners of the sponsoring companies had been covertly communicating with none other than Xianyu himself. Realizing he's been outplayed, Wan Shan is consumed with anger, clutching his chest and remaining frozen in his chair. Afterward, it's revealed that Aquan has tampered with her hero's vehicle, and seeing Xianyu and Fonsing drive away, he wears a smug expression. Meanwhile, Uncle Sao stumbles upon Xianyu's cabin and witnesses all of his family's memories. Deep down, he is feeling guilty for the murders. Just then, Xianyu and Fonsing enter the room, startling the crap out of him. It turns out a few days prior, Xianyu had uncovered Uncle Sao's secret installation of surveillance cameras in the cabin, possibly intended to monitor Xianyu's progress in his investigation. This discovery significantly intensified Xianyu's suspicions. Fearing the potential consequences and plagued by a guilty conscience, Uncle Sao eventually confesses to the murders and pleads for mercy. Aquan is also apprehended by the police, and both are sentenced to death for premeditated murder. The next morning, Xiankyu appoints Dr. Zhang as head of the Project Fanning in the R&D division of his company. Similarly, he designates Deng Yu as the director of commercial operations within the same department. Later that day, Xianyu visits Wan Shan's office to offer his apology. He proceeds to clear up the entire misunderstanding and expresses regret for attempting to seek revenge for his parents' death. Meanwhile, Wen Yu confides in Dr. Zhang, sharing that she's been pursuing him for a year. As she observes Dr. Zhang's composed demeanor, she senses that he has feelings for her too, but struggles to express them. Literally taking matters into her own hands, she boldly kisses him. In the meantime, beneath the beautiful sky, Fonsing and Xianyu gaze at the stars. Curious, she wonders which star symbolizes Xianyu, and he responds with a smile, saying that no matter which star he is, he will always be by her side. With these words, the two share a tender kiss, and the show comes to an end.